students understand text features and text factors and genre developmentally at different stages. And this slide shows you a developmental continuum or timeline of comprehension by text factors by grade. So if we start on the left of the chart, we see pre-K students. Our pre-K students understand that texts are different by genre. They understand fiction texts, nonfiction texts, and poetry as different categories of the kind of books. To get them to this understanding, it means that you're going to introduce your book and either tell them what genre it is, or you will ask them what genre it is and help them make some predictions. So in a pre-K classroom, you might introduce your book. Today we're going to read a fiction book, boys and girls, and this is a made-up story about pumpkins. Or you might say, today we're reading a nonfiction book and it shares information about how to grow a pumpkin. Or you might say, today we're reading a poem about a pumpkin. And just by naming and categorizing those genres, the boys and girls begin to pick up that there are different categories of books, and they're different in what they share with us, and also different in the purpose that the author had in writing the book. Eventually, you'll get to that part where they can do the predicting and make some educated guesses about the genre. Now, with that background in mind, when they move into kindergarten, our learners are going to be able to understand all about fiction stories and that they are made up, and they'll begin to tell and write their own fiction stories. They also will be able to listen to nonfiction text and find the big ideas. What was the main purpose of this story? And they also will begin to look at poetry and figure out some of the different components or poetic devices. So they might begin to say, this poem is a rhyming poem, or this poem is an information poem. They'll be able to begin to pick those out. With that in mind, we move into first grade. And first graders are going to build on all the skills that pre-K and kindergarten students have, and they will add an understanding about text factors. And they'll know how text works for fiction, informational books, and poetry, and they'll begin to use that in their own writing. So if you look at the writing of a kindergartner, it's very simplistic, but when we get into our first graders, with instruction, they can write nonfiction and fiction books and poetry of all different forms, and they can show by modeling through lessons of what good authors do, they can begin to use that in their own writing. In second grade, they'll continue through this, and we'll begin to look more at text as subgenres. And when we get to the slide in the presentation, you'll see that we've already discussed a lot of the subgenres out there. Second graders are very good at categorizing books by subgenre, not just looking at fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, but they'll get deeper into those categories. They can also pick out text structure and text feature examples in books, and again, this requires explicit instruction and modeling and demonstrating through real literature, but then they'll begin to develop those skills of awareness to help them in the comprehension area as readers. In third grade, they will not only begin to pick them out like they did in second grade, but they begin to draw their own text features and diagrams. They'll begin to use different subgenres in their writing, and their poetry can get a lot more in depth because they have been introduced to such a variety of different poetic forms and devices. Now, as fourth graders and on, we really look at the analysis of all of these. So in fiction, we're going to really analyze those story elements using higher level thinking skills. In our informational text, we want them using those text structures consistently in their writing, and in their writing of poetry, applying the poetic forms naturally without as much prompting from the teacher. And so this is where the comprehension is going to develop. It's going to be a partnership between reading and writing of all of these genres and text factors, and this will enhance their understanding as they listen or read to different literature.